Your boy George Carmi from the Full Press Commanders. We're talking the Tennessee Titans and the Washington Commanders in a Week 5 matchup. Let's get it on. What's up, everybody? Thank you for spending your Wednesday morning with me here today. I'm joined by Tyler Rowland right here from the Locked On Titans podcast. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, George. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an exciting football game that we have ahead of us, and I'm ready to break it down with you.
100%. So Tyler is the host of the Locked On Titans podcast, as I alluded to before. He's a former writer from the Titans Wire on USA Today, and I'm very thankful for him to join us today and kind of talk about this upcoming matchup. So, Tyler, let's get into it, man. I love talking football, and I know you do too. So, the Tennessee Titans stand at 2-2 after winning a 24-17 win over the Indianapolis Colts. What is the narrative coming out of Nashville right now? Is there a lot of confidence? How's the team feeling? What's the state of the team in Nashville, in Tennessee?
I think right now there's cautious optimism around this team. The Titans have done some things. The Titans are the most explosive offense in the NFL in the first half. But in the second half, they've been outscored 64-7 this year. So it's truly been a Jekyll and Hyde situation for the Titans from the first half to the second half. So people are really excited about what they've seen from the offense in the first half, but they're also terrified of what the offense has been.
Yeah.
In the second half, the Titans seem to have problems adjusting to the adjustments. So teams come out, they see what you're doing. Then in the second quarter, third drive, fourth drive, past halftime into the second half, they start adjusting. And the Titans have to adjust off of what teams are adjusting. Well, they're not able to do that successfully. And luckily, the defense has been clutch at times in second half, forcing turnovers, getting stops, holding on, just barely holding on to capitalize on that lead. The Titans tried to do that in the first game of the season against the Giants. The Titans were up 13-0 at halftime. They were up 20-7, I believe, at one point as well. And the Giants came all the way back and won 21-20 because the Titans could not, for the life of them, close out the game. So I guess Titans fans are excited by some of the things that they've seen. The defense at times has been locked down. I mean, they held the Colts to 37 rushing yards, 38 rushing yards as a team on Sunday.
I saw that.
As we saw against the Raiders in the second half, as we saw against the Bills the entire game, the Titans also are prone to give up explosive plays if things don't go well. So we've seen like some top tier moments of first seed in the AFC Titans, but we've also seen some moments of, oh, this isn't even a playoff team Titans. And Titans fans are excited about the good, worried about the bad, and don't really know where to fall in between right now.
Gotcha. I definitely noticed those same trends while I was doing some game film watching the other day. What do you attest to the second half fallouts? Like, what's going on? Do you think it's just the defensive adjustments? Do you think it's just like coaching, or what do you think? Lack of talent? I have no idea. I'm trying to get some perspective.
Well, at the end of the day, since we're not in the building, nor would the people in the building tell us the truths of these matters, it's really on me to theorize. And if I had to theorize, like you said, you like watching the game film. That's something I really focus on. It's my primary focus, quite frankly, on my show and on my Twitter account. For me, it's a combination of things. Whenever there's a problem this big, there's never just one person to blame. I think if we had to assign the most blame, though, it would be on Titans offensive coordinator Todd Downing, because the Titans struggled last year early in games on offense. And they brought in Tim Kelly, who is the former offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. And he is the passing game coordinator and just an offensive assistant, you know what I mean? And Mike Vrabel said that him, along with Todd Downing, would work together on game planning and stuff like that. Well, the Titans all of a sudden have scored on all 4 of their first drives of the year in every game this year.
Great stat.
Totally, right. Totally flipped overnight from last year when they literally scored, I think it was 4 times total in their opening drives, 3 touchdowns and a field goal. last year. So what's changed? You got to give some of the credit to Tim Kelly at that point. That's the only real change that we've seen. So you think, oh, okay, Tim Kelly's helping with the game plan. Well, now the Titans are good with their first 15 plays or so on offense, and then things start to fall apart a little bit. And you have to wonder, is Tim Kelly helping with the opening game script? And
First
then
15 plays.
and then as it goes time to adjust to what the defense is doing, then it's all on Todd Downing, and he isn't able to make the adjustments. Now, for Titans fans, that's very convenient that the offensive coordinator we all don't like is calling the bad plays, and the guy we want to be the offensive coordinator is responsible for all the good stuff. So that in reality can't be totally true. But maybe there's some truth to it, and that's the big piece of blame pie. Well, then after that, you do have to put it on the players. For some reason, the offensive line, the tight ends, they simply aren't executing as well in the second half. It's like teams kind of get hit, they get punched in the mouth, and they're like, oh, you're Dennis Daly. You're Aaron Brewer. You're not that good. What are we doing? You know what I mean? And then they start playing better. And the other part of it is, and something that really showed up to me on Sunday against the Colts, is when all this stuff is going wrong, when you're an NFL team and all this stuff is going wrong, and this should resonate with Commanders fans.
Yeah.
When all these things are going wrong,
the
coach maybe isn't calling the best plays. The offensive line isn't blocking that well. The wide receivers aren't really getting super open. You know, it's all tight windows. That is the moment when your quarterback lifts you up and says, you know what? Everything's going wrong, but I'm going to make a play. I'm going to get out of the pocket if I'm Lamar Jackson and go for a 50-yard run down the sideline. I'm Josh Allen. I'm going to scramble around and then throw a 70-yard dot to somebody who isn't that open but gets a pass interference or something like that. Quarterbacks in the NFL are what raise all the other boats up above the tide when things are crashing down. 100%. Ryan Tannehill is a guy. You just imagine a guy. He's got a farmer's tan, real pale in the chest and the shoulders. Got a nice tan on his arms. He's got the white nose covered up with the sunscreen. He's got shades on, some Hawaiian flower shorts, and he's just standing right there on the precipice of the waves and letting the wave crash over him. That's Ryan Tannehill. You know, he's good. He's good. Like Kirk Cousins. Commanders fans know, like Kirk Cousins is good when everything is going good, but when everything's going bad, he's not going to do anything to stem 100%. The tide. And that's 100%. Tannehill, and he missed some throws on Sunday against the Colts that were open, and it's just like, throw the dang ball. But he's a little scared of turnovers from last year and early in the year, and I think he's playing scared. And when the going gets tough and things are tight and tense in the second half and they're losing leads, Tannehill gets more scared, not more emboldened to go save the team. So those are just all parts of the blame pie, but that's how I would kind of set it all out.
I love it. That's vivid imagery. I'll never forget Ryan Tannehill with some lotion on his nose. But
he looks like that kind of guy too.
He does 100%. So I definitely noticed that as well. From when I was doing my scouting and watching the film, it seemed like the Titans still want to rely on Derrick Henry as their primary option. I was kind of surprised by the fact that they use him out of the backfield as often as they do. I thought he was primarily a running back.
Nice adjustment.
They're starting to, is that new, I guess, to the Titans this year?
One thing that the Titans do that everybody knows is they run play action. They run Derrick Henry, and they play action off of that. Well, think about what linebackers do during a play action pass. In theory, when you're doing the fake, they come up. And that's how the Titans get all those spots over the middle of the field. Well, what are they going to do after they realize, oh, crap, it's a pass? They're not going to start backpedaling. They're going to turn and run back to their zone spot, or 100%. Turn and try to run to their man assignment. Well, the Titans said, okay, instead of leaving Derrick Henry in after play action passes to block and help with protection, we're going to sink him out real quick. And Derrick, get out there and turn the heck around. Turn around and be ready. So what the Titans have done is they've said after that play action fake, when the linebackers turn their back and start running backwards, they're not going to be paying attention to Derrick Henry sitting down right past the offensive line. So to me, that is a big adjustment that the Titans have made this season. Not only does it help Ryan Tannehill get rid of the ball and take less sacks and less negative plays, but it also gets the ball in the hands of your best
Yeah,
player
that's what I
and
was
helps to
noticing
get
as
him
well.
more
That's what I was
involved.
noticing as
Yeah,
well.
so that's what they've done this year is on those play action fakes rather than having Derrick Henry sit inside and help with blocking. They just leak him out. And why linebackers are being overly aggressive to drop back in their zones, they're able to have some room underneath for Derrick Henry to catch the ball, turn around, and get going. Because we all know the truth. Derrick Henry still, he had a couple drops last week. He's not
Mhm.
like the quickest, shiftiest guy in a phone booth. He's kind of a downhill, straight speed, train type
Mhm.
guy. We all know that. So he still struggles a little bit with catching, quickly turning, making a guy miss, all that, getting the ball in his hands. But that's why when those linebackers are dropping back so fast, it gives him a little bit extra room, and then he can convert those to positive plays.
100%. Yeah. So from what I perceive, Derrick Henry definitely is read option one. They definitely want to give him the ball, pound the ball with Derrick Henry. They work off the play action and read option quite often as well. They don't really run Ryan Tannehill too much unless they get within like the goal line with the 5 yards and in. They possibly
Yeah,
try to throw that little wrinkle in the game plan. And it seems like they pepper Robert Woods a lot. Robert Woods is probably the wide receiver one
yeah.
from what I've noticed.
Mhm.
Traylon Burks, I think they're still trying to incorporate him into the offense. He's still kind of finding his way. I know that he had two rushing touches the last two games, but really, in regard to passing volume, not really. And there's, I guess, Westbrook. I forget his hyphenated last name. Westbrook.
Uh, you could just call him NWI. That's what
And
we do. It's
NW.
Nick Westbrook Akina.
Yeah,
He's an
I saw him
undrafted
get some
free agent
play.
from 2020. Yeah,
Okay.
he's a solid depth wide receiver, but
Yeah.
he's not like a starting level wide. He's just an excellent blocker. He's a couple biscuits away from being a tight end, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while he's a guy, he's in there. He is just a guy, but he is an excellent blocker as a wide
Hmm.
receiver. Sadly, with Traylon Burks, he suffered turf toe
Mm.
in one of the later portions of the game on Sunday against Indy. He is not going to play in this game. That's just the reality. And he is the
Hmm.
most
Oh wow, I didn't realize
dynamic
that. Okay.
yep. They haven't announced anything about it, but the reality is he's not going
Yeah.
to play this week. I talked to Dr. David Chow at Pro Football Doc on Twitter
Yeah.
on my show earlier this week about it. He said the Titans should be hopeful for a 3-week return. The Titans have a bye after they play
Hmm.
the Commanders.
Okay.
So Burks isn't going to play in this game. Then
Yeah,
they'll have
probably
the
wise to
bye,
let him.
and then
Hmm.
and then maybe he'll come back after that or the week after because the Titans have 2 division games in a row after the bye. But yeah, luckily for the Commanders, Burks isn't going to play in this game, and that leaves only Robert Woods as an NFL starting level wide receiver for the
Hmm.
Titans. I think that's going to make it infinitely easier to guard the Titans. And obviously we can. Well, why don't we do that now? We can get into it
Yeah,
now.
we'll talk about it. Well, let me ask you a question. I think you're going to go that
Sure.
direction anyway. So, from what I've seen, this is just a couple games, right? It's 4 games into the year. You're deeper in the weeds than I am. It seems like obviously the Titans want to run the ball. If the running game is not working, they kind of do play action, pass the tight ends, more of an intermediate route, short passing game. They aren't
Mhm.
really vertical. Is that a fair to say, or am I missing something here?
Well, I think that's true. And part of the
Okay.
problem with that, and you're right, that does lead us in, is the Titans don't have a lot of vertical threats.
Okay.
Robert Woods is not a vertical threat.
Hmm.
Traylon Burks was the only real vertical threat that they have Josh Gordon on
Yeah, I
their
didn't even know
practice
that.
squad.
I didn't see him
Yeah,
on the. Yeah, he was
well,
on the
he
field,
he
right?
doesn't
Yeah.
really play a lot. He's on the practice squad technically, but they've elevated him a couple of times. They didn't last week, but
Hmm.
they'll probably elevate him for this game because the big problem the Titans have is they don't have a lot of team speed. They don't
Okay.
have a lot of vertical threats. Traylon
Okay.
Burks was the only guy on the team who really threatened you vertically. And here's the problem. We talk about what the Titans' bread and butter is. We know about the run game with Derrick Henry, and we mentioned the play action pass. If you guys have watched the Titans at all, you know that what they like to do is come out in a 2 wide receiver set with 2 wide receivers, one on either side. One of them runs a deep post or a go route, and the other guy runs a deep crosser, a slant, or a deep in route.
Hmm.
Titans have been hitting that play action pass play over the middle on the deep end over and over. They call it play action glance, play action
Hmm.
strike, whatever. Well, normally teams are going to be in 8-man boxes because
Hmm.
they're worried about Derrick Henry. The Titans see more 8-man boxes than any team in the NFL. Well, that means you're going to have a 3 defensive back shell, and you're probably going to be playing cover 3 or you're going to be playing man in cover
Hmm.
1 with a deep safety. Well,
Yeah.
the Titans basically one vertical route on one side of the field should occupy that cornerback and hopefully the deep
You pull them
safety.
up a little bit.
And
Hmm.
right. the linebackers are pulled up by the play action pass, and that leaves your other wide receiver on the slant or the crosser or the deep end one-on-one with that cornerback. And they can
Mhm.
usually get the inside leverage and they're open over the middle of the field. Well, the problem is that deep safety has to choose. Do I come up on the intermediate or do I respect the deep route? Well, when it's Nick Westbrook-Akina or it's Josh Gordon or it's Des Fitzpatrick or it's Cody Hollister,
Yeah.
as a deep safety, you're not respecting that deep route. You're going to
Mhm.
come up and try to create traffic for the intermediate route on Robert Woods.
Mhm.
So that takes away when the Titans don't have an adequate vertical threat on the field, it takes away the fear of the deep route, which means you can come up. And not only can you create traffic for the glance or the strike over the middle of the field, but you can also be a part of the run fit. So now you're hurting yourself twice. So not having a vertical element to the offense with Traylon Burks out is a killer for the Titans. So they're going to have to run the ball when the Commanders know they're going to run the ball, because I
Yeah.
don't think that there are going to be as much openings in the passing game as there has been the first 4 weeks for them to create explosive plays.
That's gonna be interesting too. So honestly, this just hearing that on first glance, I anticipate probably a low scoring game between us both because I do think that so Washington their secondary has been susceptible. William Jackson the third has been thrown on. There has been confusion in Washington's defensive backfield quite often. That's probably the weaker part of our team. Early on, basically we had confusion in regard to bunch plays and passing off responsibilities, especially like going across the middle. But I do think our strong safeties are pretty solid. Cameron Curl, number 31, if you guys watch him this week, is a pretty strong tackler, pretty stout defender as well. And Derek Forrest. I do think we do have some team speed, but if you don't have that explosive element, that'd be kind of interesting because Washington has done a pretty decent job with the run game the past couple games. We faced the Eagles, who arguably one of the best running teams in the entire league, and we
Great
placed
O
the Cow.
line.
Yeah, and we had great O line, obviously, 100%. And then we played the Cowboys last week. They had, Pollard and Zeke Elliott. And we kind of shut them down as
Yeah.
well. So it's funny, like, I'd say the big issue with Washington is more so the explosive plays. They do give up large, big blast chunk plays, but they have been more stout in the run game as of late. Our defense hasn't been the blame for these losses. It's been more of our kind of our putrid offense. And we're going to kind of talk about that with your defense in a moment. So
Yeah.
I guess taking away that explosive element will make the game more competitive. So it's going to be interesting to see. So it's a good point there.
Yeah, that's the thing that actually concerns me about this game. I know Titans
Hmm.
fans are riding high right now and thinking, this Titans team is going to turn things around, but the real
Hmm.
issue for me is where Washington is susceptible is those explosive plays in the
Hmm.
secondary. Well,
Hmm.
sadly without Traylon Burks, I don't know if the Titans have the weapons on the outside to take advantage of
Hmm.
that. Same thing we talked about before we jumped on is the offensive line for
Yeah.
Washington may be susceptible, but with some of the injuries, who knows if the Titans can take advantage of that? Washington has some great wide receivers, a solid core of pass catchers, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And the Titans have been banged up in the secondary and had some real issues in the secondary. So there are some key matchup points here where I think things actually swing towards the Commanders.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested to see how this plays out, and I'm really, really expecting a close game.
Yeah, I agree to that. I think that's a natural pivot to what we're going to go to next with the defenses, right? So I definitely think that
Softball. There you go. Smash it
I
out of the
appreciate
park.
that, sir. Thank you, man. I think it's going to be whoever plays better defense in this game is going to win the game, in my opinion, right? Like,
Mhm.
our offense has been very leaky. We actually have given up. Our offensive line is definitely damaged. I don't know if you guys have caught that wind yet in Tennessee. Our right tackle Sam Cosby, a second round pick out of Texas, who is a athletic. He's an athletic specimen at the right tackle position, but he
Yep.
has been susceptible this year. He had thumb surgery earlier in the week. He should be out a couple of weeks. So we're gonna have Cornelius Lucas, who's a journeyman right tackle, to play there. We're on our third center, Nick Martin. We had Chase Rouillet, who's kind of the heart of our offensive line. He hurt his
Right.
ankle really early on in the year. Wes Schweitzer came in, got a concussion, was on injured reserve, and then now we see Nick Martin, who played a pretty decent role last game, but he's not necessarily a dominant center.
And it wasn't Jeffrey Simmons over top of him either. So
I know exactly right. So that's going to be something interesting we're going to talk about in a moment. And then
right.
finally, our right guard has been kind of, for lack of a better word, suspect all season long. It's Trey Turner from the Panthers.
Right.
He's a veteran. He's in his early 30s, but a lot of veteran experience. But is he still in his prime? Is he kind of going to the horizon? The end of his career. He didn't practice one bit at all during training camp because he had a quad injury. he struggled the last couple. He's played the last couple games and struggled the last couple games. And in mid-game, they replaced him with Sadiq Charles, who was a former tackle from LSU. So he's playing right guard
Mhm.
right now. So our offensive line is definitely in flux right now. We gave up 17 sacks, most in the league. It's been pretty ugly, and because of the lack of protection in the offensive line, it's been pretty chaotic. Like our offense, less than 100 yards in the first half over the past couple games. It's been pretty ugly.
Right.
So I guess I'm going to throw you a softball. So how does that apply to the Titans and the defensive line? From what I've seen, the defensive line seems pretty stout. Is that fair to say?
I think that's where the game rests. I
Okay.
think the entire game is about the Titans defensive line against the Commanders offensive line. I know that probably makes Commanders fans shiver a little
Yeah.
bit, but let's get into what we were kind of discussing before we hit the live button and went on. Bud Dupree went out of the game against the Colts after about 9 snaps. He's been a $20 million fire, quite
Mm-hmm.
frankly, with how much he's been injured when he's been with the Titans. Now, the reality here is this: when he plays, the Titans are a better defense than when he doesn't play. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean he's worth $20 million. But what
Mm-hmm.
it does mean is he is a solid NFL starter. He is a solid NFL edge player. And the Titans have 3 guys who are excellent right now. Now, last year they had Harold Landry, who had 12 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey Simmons, who had 8.5, Danico Autry, who had 9.
Mm-hmm.
This year, Harold Landry tore his ACL before the year. Terrible, important for the Titans defense. But second-year player from Pitt, Rashad Weaver, has stepped into a role. He doesn't do exactly what Landry does, but he can rush the passer. And Rashad
Mm-hmm.
Weaver is top 10 in the NFL right now, top 5 maybe if you count ties and all that, with 4 sacks. He's had 4
Wow. Okay.
sacks in 4 games as a second year player. So when you have Rashad Weaver and Bud Dupree on the edges and Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry rushing from the interior, that is still one of the best pass rush fronts in the entire NFL. And based on what you're saying, yes, they would eat the Commanders alive and it'd probably
Mm-hmm.
wreck the game because
Yeah.
then Wentz would get flustered. He'd turn over the ball when he gets flustered rather than just taking a sack or dumping it
Yeah.
off, doing Carson Wentz things.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, Bud Dupree left. And the Titans pass rush, while still very good with Weaver and Autry, who at Autry destroyed his former team in the Colts last week. It was
I saw
phenomenal.
that.
That's
And
that's what I'm
Tart
writing
had a
my
good game
film
as
article
well.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
Tier Tart
Tier Tart.
is
Yeah.
a very good player. He's more of a run stuffing nose tackle when it's time to rush the passer. Tart usually will come off the field. If they want to go with a nose tackle rusher, it's Naquan Jones, number 90. He's
Okay.
also an undrafted free agent. But Tart in the run game will be incredibly important. And, obviously there are running downs that turn into passes. You don't always know if you're going to run or pass. So Tart does a good job. But if I'm the Commanders, I'm really worried about the rush package of Dupree, Autry, Simmons, and Weaver. If Dupree doesn't play, then the Titans will have to use Autry more on the edge rather than the inside, and they start have to make certain other combinations with backup players. And then if it gets to that and Dupree doesn't play, then Washington can chip with a tight end, chip with a back, slide this way, slide that way, and maybe have enough success to play some offense.
Mm-hmm.
If Bud Dupree plays, though, I think that could be the game-wrecking matchup because where the Commanders can take advantage is with their pass catchers against the Titans' banged-up secondary. If Wentz doesn't have time to do that,
Mm-hmm.
then they're not going to be able to take advantage. If he does have time, if he has time and the Titans' pass rush doesn't destroy the game plan, I think Washington has a great chance to win because Terry McLaurin and Kurt Samuel, maybe even Daimi Brown, who I liked a lot out
What's
of
up,
North
man?
Carolina.
Yeah, no, we'll talk about him in a
Uh,
second. Ivy Brown for
I,
sure.
and Antonio Gibson out of the backfield, Logan
Mm-hmm.
Thomas, they can really take advantage of the Titans in the pass game if they give Wentz time to do it. So that offensive line of the Commanders versus the Titans D line is just the most critical thing in the game.
100%. And that's going to be in my opinion, that's going to be the narrative of Washington all year long, right? So,
Probably.
yeah, Carson Wentz had ample time in the first game of the season. He threw for over 300 yards, had 4 touchdowns. Washington's community was like, "Oh, we finally got a quarterback. We have an established quarterback to throw the ball." I think the Detroit Lions kind of set the blueprint on how to beat Washington this year. It's just go like the Lions just balls to the walls. They basically just kind of blitz and just, have zero coverage and are attacking
Right.
the offensive line, and that showed that our offensive line can't receive that, and it also showed that Carson Wentz can be flustered. The Eagles and the Cowboys continued that trend. Our offensive line couldn't even throw the ball downfield. Like as a result, we basically had to do short passing plays. Like our offense of the past couple games has been one of two things, right? One of three things. You have to run the ball. You either do a short pass, like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, or take an occasional deep shot to Terry McLaurin. So kind of like just try to flip the field. There hasn't been enough time for the intermediate passing game, and that's kind of been a flaw. It's been like a hidden. I'm sure you guys can relate to that in Tennessee. We don't really have that. We don't really have that element to kind of attack opposing defenses. This week, we have an addition and we have a loss, right? So Jahan Dotson, who's been a great wide receiver coming out of Penn State, 4 touchdowns
Yep.
on the year, has been a stout route runner. He actually kind of pulled his, like, I believe his hamstring or like groin, I
Yeah.
believe, in his last game.
He's on 3 of my fantasy teams. I
Oh,
love
there you
Jahan
go. So you
Dotson.
know how he feels, right? So he's gonna be out for a
Yeah.
couple of games. I loved him. He's fun to watch, and honestly, he built a great rapport with Carson Wentz over training camp because Terry McLaurin was still going through his contract negotiations, and Jahan Dotson was the one receiving all the balls. He kind of like was establishing a relationship there. But he's gone. But we're bringing back Brian Robinson. He was activated to practice today.
Yep.
Brian Robinson's a great running back coming out of Alabama, over 1,000 yards, 12, 14 touchdowns, something along those lines. We like him in Washington because he doesn't dance as much as Antonio Gibson. He's more of a fall forward kind of like, get 4 yards in a cloud of dust kind of running back. So I think
Right.
the thought is, in order to counteract the Titans defensive line, just pound the ball kind of at them and kind of see how it goes. But I guess my question to you, two things, right? So first question, your defensive line, I've seen two stories, right? I've seen, them completely shut down Jonathan Taylor. I saw the Raiders kind of get some success against you guys. So I kind of saw that two different narratives. And then also, does Vrabel and your defensive coordinator, they like to dial up pressure on the defensive line? Or is it more like a reactive defense or like set the tone kind of defense?
Well, I think what the Titans like to do is simulated pressures. It actually
Okay.
was one of the biggest talking points within the NFL community throughout the offseason. What the Titans will do is the Titans just want to bring 4. They
Mm-hmm.
never want to like fully blitz with 5. They did early in the year, but I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of that was some of the injuries that they had up front, establishing their rotation. The last couple of games, they have not blitzed a ton. They have
Okay.
trusted their 4-man rush, but what they'll do is they'll blitz a linebacker up the middle. They'll blitz a cornerback off the slot.
Mm-hmm.
But every time they do that, they drop one of the defensive linemen into coverage. So
Interesting.
they're only rushing 4, but they're doing it from different directions. And what they'll do is they'll simulate that they're coming from one direction. They'll pull back and come from the other direction, and they're only rushing 4 though. So they still have that 7 in coverage at all
Mm-hmm.
times as they
Mm-hmm.
want. So that's what the Titans like to do there. So with that, it's almost like they're blitzing because it's coming at the offensive line like they're blitzing. And a lot of the time, the right side of the offensive line sees the slot cornerback coming, and they don't know that the defensive end dropped from the left side. So
Mm.
they don't slide over, or they do slide over thinking it's a regular blitz. And then a guy drops off, and they're like, oh, we slid over here, and now somebody's dropping off. Now the numbers are bad on the other side. So
Mm-hmm.
they do things like that. I would be surprised if the Titans blitz too much because they want to trust their
Mm-hmm.
front 4. But I do think that they'll do a lot of those simulated pressures, a lot of those stunt blitzes, and the Titans like to do games and twists up front as well. So that's really what I think they would focus on doing. I don't expect them to send 5 or 6 a bunch in the game,
Mm-hmm.
even though maybe some other teams have had success with that. I think the Titans feel they can beat the offensive line with their front 4 and their simulated pressures rather than have to truly blitz, which of course is, 5 or more people.
Gotcha. I apologize. I don't have the stats in front of me, but are the Titans more of a turnover-prone defense? I noticed they got a interception last week, I believe, and 2 fumble recoveries. Is that something are you guys doing pretty well this year in regard to that?
Yeah. The Titans do find a way to get turnovers. I don't know what the exact numbers are off the top of my head as well, but they did find a way. The defense has found a way, especially in second halves,
Mhm.
has found a way to get stops on 4th down, which are essentially turnovers, or also get turnovers. The Titans have been a good red zone defense
Mm.
as well. So all those things factor in. But yeah, the Titans have found a way to force some turnovers against teams and give their offense easy situations to score. And that's been part of why the Titans have been so successful in first halves, is because the defense has found a way to get the ball back to them. So yeah, the Titans defense, especially Titans safety Kevin Byard. I
Okay, yeah,
believe
I saw an interception in the goal in the red
he's
zone last year,
oh
last week.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
He had interception against the Raiders. He's made big plays throughout his entire career. I believe that he has the most interceptions in the NFL since he was drafted in
Wow. Okay.
2016. He's been a first team All Pro twice in his career. He's not the best in man on man coverage, but every other aspect of being a safety, he's incredible. And dear God, he knows how to get that ball away from the other team. He picked off Carson Wentz to win the game against the Colts in week 8 last season.
Okay.
He's a guy who you gotta keep the ball away from Kevin Byard because he's gonna be all over it. And yeah, the Titans will find ways to create turnovers, and that's what I'm worried about if I'm Washington. Is the Titans pass rush is successful, Wentz is gonna make some Wentzian style mistakes, and the Titans safeties are gonna be there to pick it off.
That may be an underrated element that we're both not talking about, right? So the Titans have some familiarity with Carson. They have one season of
Yes.
tape on him, but they have seen him before and they
Right.
kind of played him before, so that's interesting. So we talked about the strengths of the Titans defense and the defensive line and generating pressure. In your opinion, what are some of the weak links that they have on the defense? Where can Washington attack them? Where are they susceptible?
Yeah, it's something that I've kind of mentioned throughout. I think the Washington pass catching group
Hmm.
is very solid. Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Damie Brown, Kurt Sam. I know Dotson can't go, but Antonio
Hmm.
Gibson obviously has some real receiving chops as
Hmm.
well. I think the Titans were incredibly susceptible over the middle of the field against Colts tight ends, running
Hmm.
drag routes against cover 3 and drag routes against man coverage, which the Titans like a lot. It forced the Titans to switch their coverage in the second half and go with more cover 4 and cover 2 against
Hmm.
the Colts to try to take that away. I would imagine that the Titans will go back to what they like to do, and Washington could maybe hit some drags early on.
Hmm.
Again, if the offensive line gives Wentz enough time, Terry McLaurin is going to be able to roast, whether it be Terrence Mitchell or Caleb Farley. The Titans have Christian Fulton on one side, who's good. He's a very
Hmm.
good cornerback. They have
Hmm.
Roger McCreary, a rookie on the
Yeah,
inside on the
Auburn, right?
slot,
Second
who
round pick. Yeah.
yeah, he's a good player. He has his moments. You know what I mean? Dotson probably would have given him struggles, but he's still a solid player. But the other side, Terrence Mitchell or Caleb Farley, whoever's playing the other cornerback spot, incredibly susceptible there to deep routes, double moves, things like that. And then the Titans may be without their other starting safety, Amani Hooker, who just got a new contract, one of the best safeties in the NFL. And they may be starting a guy like Andrew Adams or Joshua Kalu, guys who shouldn't be on NFL rosters right now.
Okay.
And
Okay.
over the middle of the field against the linebackers and the safeties, the Titans are susceptible. And deep down the field, if you have time against Caleb Farley or Terrence Mitchell, the Titans are susceptible. So they have some weak links in the secondary because of injuries right now. If Wentz has time, he should be able to hit some deep shots, get some explosive plays, and that could really flip things for Washington, even if they don't have successful offense all day against the Titans front seven and D line.
100%. So if Wentz has time is the magic question, it appears to be. So that's true. I think Washington does want to attack deep. Like we run an Air Coryell offense where like, coming from North Turner, coming from the Chargers back in the day,
Yep.
they want to throw vertical. So they will
Yeah.
test that. They will throw that deep. I think they do also want to incorporate Terry McLaurin more. One of the flaws of Washington's offense over the past couple games is not incorporating him enough. I believe he had maybe to 1 or 0 targets in the first half over the past 2 or 3 games, and he
Yeah.
starts to turn it up in the
Unacceptable.
second half. Yeah, it's unacceptable. Like,
This is a
he
get right game for Terry McLaurin, though. I
hope
think Commanders fans should be excited about what he could do this week.
Okay, there's been whispers that basically, like, like he's a consummate professional. He won't say anything bad, but you can just
Mhm.
kind of tell in body language and by the way he carries himself that he isn't being happy by the targets that he received. This is not the way the
Right.
season would be going for him. In fact, Curtis Samuel has been the guy that's been most targeted on Washington throughout this, throughout the season, and they actually
Right.
incorporate him in the running game too. He actually has been a pretty nice little like wrinkle to add to our offense this year. So, I do think Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel will have to step up. We have Logan Thomas, who's a pretty solid tight end as well. He might be able to work in the middle of the field. However, he is coming back from an ACL surgery from last year, but he's been playing every single game so far, so he's healthy. But I don't know how explosive he'll be, but he's a solid pass catcher there. Before I dive into like level of confidence and outcomes of the game, do you have any questions for Washington? Do you want to hear about any of our team at all? Or you're curious about anything, or what do you feel?
I mean, you've done a great job of breaking down the guys on the offensive line. My question is that defensive line, when the
Yeah.
Commanders played their best football in recent years, the defensive line was really at the forefront of that. What's the defensive line looking like right now without Chase Young?
So we definitely miss Chase Young. In theory, he's eligible to come back because he's off that injury designation. He could come back this week, but I don't think he will. He had pretty extensive surgery where he had a patella tendon issue in addition to his ACL. So he'll probably be like another week or two, maybe more towards later October. But our defensive line has been pretty stout. Like it was a we were kind of concerned because on the national perspective, they get a lot of kudos and props, but at the same time, we wish they generated more pressure here, like locally. But in regard to the run game, they've been awesome. They've been shutting down the run game pretty great over the past couple games. Deron Payne, number 94. I don't know if he's on your radar yet. He's been fantastic. He's itching for a contract. He's basically in the last year of he's in the last year of his contract here, so he's basically angling for one. I believe he has 2 sacks, 3 pass breakups. He has a safety against the I forget what game it was. He had safety against what was it, the Cowboys or it was the Eagles, I think. Whatever. He had a safety a couple of games ago. He's actually doing very well. And Jonathan Allen is second in the league with tackles for loss with 7. So Jonathan Allen's been pretty steady too. So our interior defensive line is doing pretty well. We do lack depth. So unfortunately, let's say one of those guys gets knocked out or something that happens there, that's going to be a big issue for us. Ideally, we want them playing 70%, 60% of the snaps to kind of give them a blow. But we basically lost our second round pick, Phil Mathis, out of Alabama during training camp. So we kind of lost that depth piece. Tim Settle went to the Buffalo Bills, so we were losing some depth there. Then finally, Montez Sweat was our first round pick. We actually traded up to get him. What's up, my boy Chris? Chris is in the chat. I love this guy. He's also, what's up, Chris? Montez Sweat was a first-round selection. I think he has incredible upside as an athlete, just as competitive as Chase Young, but he is generating pressure but not getting any sacks. He has 0 sacks on the year, so it's definitely a concern for us. He basically is up for a large contract, and the debate in Washington circles is: do we re-sign Montez Sweat, a more premium position, or do we re-sign Deron Payne, who's actually having a better year? And that's kind of the debate right now. And you can't pour too much money into the defensive line. You have to be mindful of it. And then Chase Young's contract looming in a couple of years too, so you have to have some foresight on how it goes. So I think our run defense is actually pretty good. The weakness would be our pass defense. William Jackson, number 3. He was a big free agent signing from the Cincinnati to come to Washington. He's more of a press man corner, but Washington likes to deploy more zone coverage. And I think he just gets confused in regard to communication on the back end. There was one game last week when you watched the film, CeeDee Lamb basically runs down untouched and scores a touchdown because I believe Washington was running a cover 4. Basically, the cornerback drops back and then, the safety drops back as well. And he wanted to pass responsibility over to the safety, but the safety was doing another responsibility wide open. Yep. You and I could throw the touchdown. It was all good. So we'll see so that's basically how it turned out. So like I said, our defensive line, there's some good fans in this time for a get right game in the chat. I love it. So good positivity, but
boo Jay.
Yeah, boo Jay. But basically I think if trends continue, our defensive line should do a good job containing Derrick Henry, but who knows? He's one of the best running backs in the league. And then we will be susceptible to larger, deep throws, but it might be a good matchup in regard to not having explosive wide receivers, and our wide receivers are explosive. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think there are some good matchups for the Commanders to take advantage. There are some good matchups for the Commanders to take advantage of, but there is one matchup that if the Titans win, it won't matter. So that's where it all comes down to. If one domino falls, they'll all fall. But if Washington can keep that domino up, then they'll go the other way. You know what I mean?
It's all about the defensive line attacking our offensive line. I agree 100%. Yep. So
that is the game.
Let's bring it on home. You've been an awesome guest, Tyler. I really appreciate it. So you don't have to give me score prediction. If you want to, go ahead. Feel free. I know it's kind of a tricky thing to do, but in regard to confidence going into this game, how do you feel? Do you think the Titans are going to win? Is it going to be a pretty close game? What are your perspectives?
Well, I think that the Titans don't know how to play games that aren't close games unless they get blown out, and I
Yeah.
don't think that Washington is a good enough team to blow the Titans out.
Noted.
So I think it's going to be an incredibly close game. I think, like we've seen, the Titans are going to find a way to get up early
Mhm.
when they have their game plan set. And then Washington will hit some explosive plays as we move forward throughout the end of the second, into the third, blah, blah, blah. That'll make it look closer. I think I'm going to go 24-23 Titans.
Okay.
Uh, but if there's if Washington can have three explosive plays, they'll win the game. They can have
Interesting.
three explosive plays, they'll win the game. But I think the Titans will find a way to limit them to two and then get a couple turnovers themselves. I think 24-23 Titans, with a high chance that the Commanders could still win the game. So low confidence, 24-23 is my prediction.
All right, that's good to hear, I guess, from my perspective. It's gonna be a close game. We'll see how that goes.
If you
To
can
your
get
point.
over 24, the Commanders will win. If they could score more than 24 points, they'll win, because the Titans cannot score more than 24 points. They haven't scored more than 24 points, other than they scored 28 in the last week against Houston last year. They haven't scored more than 24 points in a long time
Interesting. Okay.
since then. So if the Commanders can get over 24, they'll win. I think that means three explosive plays that lead to three touchdowns. If they can get three touchdowns, I think they can win, but we'll see if they
So
can or not.
so you're telling me to bet the under. Okay, I got you over there. Makes sense. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
We'll definitely see how that goes. I mean, to your credit, Washington has been down for majority of our games. It's unfortunate. We tend to start slow, then come back in the second half after some adjustments.
Yeah.
Washington's offense has not been explosive by any means, and I believe it's lower five in DVOA, and it's going to be a struggle for us to score. So I do believe if Carson Wentz has some offensive protection, I think he'll do pretty well. And for our sake over here, more power to you. You're a good person. I want you guys to be happy, but at the same time, it's going to be miserable if Washington falls to 1-4. It's not going to be positive here
Yeah.
by any means at all. So we'll see how that goes. Tyler, before we wrap it up, please tell our listeners where they can find you on social media, what upcoming projects you have, and kind of plug what you have.
Sure. Obviously, Monday through Friday. Usually, I do 7 episodes a week if you count my little 10-minute recaps and things like that. But that's all available on the Locked On Titans YouTube channel, Locked On Titans podcast on all platforms. You can find me on Twitter at Tic Tac Titans. I focus on the X's and O's. It's corny and cheesy, but hey, so am I. But I do focus a ton on the film. I do a Tic Tac Tuesday film thread where I do about 30 to 40 clips from the game. If you're a Commanders fan and the Commanders win, that might be very fun for you to go through that thread. Even if the Commanders lose, it will at minimum be educational. Outside of that, I do a film article every week for the Titans Wire on the USA Today once a week, breaking down the coolest thing I saw on film or whatever like that. So that's all informational stuff that Commanders fans could still enjoy, even if they don't want to hear me talk about the Titans too much.
So Tyler is definitely a fantastic guest. I will definitely follow you because I want to see the cut up at the end of this week. So we'll see how that goes. As
You
you
can go
guys
look
know,
at the ones I've already done if you want to get an idea of what the Titans are going to try to do too.
that
So
sounds good.
it can
That's
be
on YouTube.
educational in that
That's
way.
on YouTube, Tyler. Where's that?
My film stuff is on my Twitter account at
Okay.
Tic Tac Titans. Yep.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Sounds good. So, guys, as you know, I'm George Carmi. At GCarmi21 is my major handle. My secondary handle is at FPC_Commanders for Full Press Commanders. I'm host of the Full Press Commanders podcast on all audio platforms and YouTube. I also write for FullPressCoverage.com. It's going to be a great week in week 5. We'll see how this Titans and Commanders game matches up. Tyler, enjoy the game. All right, man?
Yep. You as well. Thank you so much.
All right, peace out, guys. Peace.